My name is Olena. I'm 46, and this is the story I've feared my entire life. But now, in this hospital room, where time drips slower than the IV, the fear is gone. There is only presence and silence, thick, almost tangible, like that pause in a theater just before the lights come on. My mother lies in a hospital bed. She's 86, hemorrhagic stroke, coma. She doesn't speak, doesn't respond. A machine breathes for her. Her body is weak, fragile, hooked up to tubes and monitors. The doctor's prognosis is as sharp as a blade, 95% fatal. I sit beside her, holding her hand. Outside the window, the earth shakes, another air raid siren. We're in a frontline city. You can hear sirens in the distance, but in here, silence, still, heavy, the kind of silence where you don't just hear your heartbeat, you start to remember. My mother, I don't even know how to begin, because with her there were never soft beginnings. She was sharp, direct, like a well-honed knife. You couldn't hug her. Her hands were always full, laundry basins, buckets, pots, documents, market bags. She had me at 40. Too late, she used to say. An accident. And once, I was 16, she said, I didn't have time to get an abortion. She didn't even look at me, just stood at the stove, stirring something, speaking like she was reading the weather forecast. I didn't respond. I walked out and stood in the rain until I was soaked to the bone. That was the first time I truly felt like a mistake. Since then, I learned to become a shadow, not to get in the way, not to ask, not to expect. In our home, no one hugged, no one stroked your hair, no one asked if it hurt. All my milestones, learning to read, my first school performance, certificates, went unnoticed. I remember reciting a poem at a school celebration. She didn't come. Later, she said, "What do I care for those little shows of yours? Your diction's weak anyway." When I brought home my diploma, she didn't even glance at it. "I'll look at it when I have time," she said, and tucked it between the utility bills. Once, I was 9. I ran away from home, sat behind the garages for hours. I couldn't stand the shouting. She said, "You're just like your father." Selfish. I didn't know what the word meant, but I knew it was ugly. That evening, I came home. She was mopping the floor. Didn't even ask where I'd been. Another time, I got sick, a fever of 39. She placed a wet towel on my forehead and went to work. I lay there all day, terrified I might die. When she came back, she said, "You need to toughen up. Don't be so soft." I never showed illness again. All my life, I learned not to be a burden, to be convenient, quiet, good. And when I became a mother, I allowed myself to cry. For the first time, I realized love isn't a luxury, that I can hug my child just because, say I love you, and not be punished for it. My kids are teaching me what my mother never did: tenderness, softness, warmth. But even with a family of my own, I still carried a stone, a silent hope, that one day she would say, "I loved you. I just didn't know how." But she never did. Our calls were short, our conversations, surface level. "I don't do sentimentality," she'd say. And I stayed silent until it was too late. When she got sick, I came, not because I'd forgiven, but because I was tired of carrying the weight. So now I sit here, in this silence, holding her hand, telling her about the grandkids, how my daughter drew all of us, even Grandma, in a pink sweater. She never wore pink, but in a child's eyes, everything is softer. I remember her hands, how they sliced bread, scrubbed floors, carried heavy bags. I see her wrinkles, and I understand. She never knew hugs either. She raised 3 kids alone after her husband's betrayal. She survived and never allowed herself to break. I tell her the words I once wished to hear. You matter. You're here. You're alive. And in that moment, I realize I'm no longer the wounded child. I'm a woman, and I can speak for myself, without fear, without anger, without demand, just with love, the kind I grew myself. That's catharsis, not waiting for someone to change, but changing yourself, not begging for permission to exist, just being. I don't know if she hears me, but I say it anyway. I love you, not for the tenderness you couldn't give, but for the life you gave me. And now I understand. I've won. Not because I was right, but because I didn't break. I stayed kind, alive, for the first time, without pain, without bitterness, without being a shadow, just living. Mom, I'm letting you go. Go in peace, without fear, without guilt. I'll hold you as long as I can, and then I'll let go. And I'll live, not in the shadows, but in the light, not in waiting, but in full presence. I'm your daughter, the one you didn't want, but the one who chose you and stayed until the end.